This presentation involves the nature of organized alternative homeless shelter communities, or AHSCs, and how they can benefit Tacoma and Pierce County and Washington State, or any other state for that matter. It includes 34 short informative slides and will take about 18 minutes for me to read. We usually have a discussion afterwards and I provide a reference sheet. My name is Bud Nye, and you can contact me at bud.nye@gmail.com. We do not propose seeing alternative homeless shelter communities as a magic bullet solution to all homelessness related problems. We do see this as one important option that can provide a safe, legal, primitive, inexpensive, temporary place for unsheltered people to sleep and dispose of their waste now, while we spend years pursuing other, much more expensive alternatives. Why do we need organized alternative shelter communities? According to 2016 point-in-time counts, we have an estimated 494 people unhoused in Pierce County each night, an increase of 46% over 2015. Current city shelters remain full and often turn these people away. Bringing together the many people in currently unorganized camps would provide an essential step in helping those in need. Here you see a photograph of a typical random unorganized tent encampment. Present measures to address homeless concerns have large important gaps and require much time and money. Alternative shelter communities cost much less than traditional proposals and can happen quickly. They remain much easier to maintain and more flexible than an indoor shelter. They reduce burden on the legal system. They provide a resource for employers seeking workers. Banishment simply does not work. From Banished, the New Social Control in Urban America, 2010 by Beckett and Herbert, banishment provides no long-term solution to the perceived problem of disorder. Indeed, it arguably enhances that problem by rendering the lives of the excluded even more difficult and unstable. The use of banishment generates a large number of criminal cases. The use of spatial exclusion to reduce disorder consumes significant public resources that might be better spent on more sensible responses to poverty, such as low-income housing. These costs only increase as banishment is more widely practiced. All people need shelter to survive. All people need to have the ability to determine their own fate and future. Most people crave family and community. Most people hunger to contribute, participate, and share their gifts. Here we see a photograph of an organized tent city, one kind of alternative shelter community. Drugs serves as another reason why we need alternative shelter communities. Pushing people into very unsafe, traumatic, homeless situations essentially guarantees a huge increase in alcohol and other drug use, as well as post-traumatic stress disorder and many other mental disorders. Providing minimal, safe shelter will, over time, help many people stop using. How do we know this? Vietnam. The Army had 20% of combat military addicted to heroin and other drugs. Many feared that these people would remain addicted and cause severe social problems when they returned home. This did not happen. Within a few years, 95% of that 20% ended their drug use after they left their high-stress, traumatic combat situations. Gabor Mate. For much evidence regarding the previous two drug-related slides, see the work of Canadian Dr. Gabor Mate. A quote of his, "If we want to get people off of drugs, we first have to de-stress them." A must-see YouTube Mate video, or two of them actually. One's called How Addiction Changes the Brain, and the other one, Attachment, Disease, and Addiction. Read his book, When the Body Says No, exploring the stress-disease connection, and In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, Close Encounters with Addiction. True, most organized alternative homeless shelter communities will not accept using alcohol or other drug-addicted residents. But we could create alternative shelter communities specifically for them, and far more homeless people do not abuse alcohol or other drugs than those who do. Many studies show that it costs far more to incarcerate and hospitalize homeless men and women, as we have for decades, than it does to provide shelter. For just two of many studies, see the Lewin Group's paper, The Costs of Serving Homeless Individuals in 9 Cities, published in 2004, and the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness, The Cost of Long-Term Homelessness in Central Florida, published in 2014. It simply does not make logical or practical sense to continue these morally reprehensible and financially perverse policies. Organized alternative shelters quickly and inexpensively get homeless people off the streets and into safe areas now, while state, county, and city leaders spend many years and many millions of dollars implementing their, quote, permanent solutions and banishment policies. Getting the homeless safely off the streets improves public health. Leaving them there obviously does not. How does it make any kind of moral, safety, or practical sense to leave the homeless miserable and dying on our streets during these years? Banning our homeless and leaving them randomly on the streets as we do now proactively creates and maintains a public health, safety, and financial disaster. Who composed the Pierce County homeless? Per the 2016 Pierce County Point-in-Time Report, we presently have 1,268 homeless, and this surely serves as an undercount. 39%, or 494, sleep unsheltered. 29% have mental health disability. 23% have a physical disability. Notice this, combining these two groups with some overlap suggests that about 40% have physical and or mental disabilities. 11% veterans. 19% have a history of substance abuse. Surely this is serves as an undercount. 34% white, 16% black, 36% multiracial, 54% male, 43% female, and others refused or fall into a transgender category. What causes homelessness? Different studies produce different results, of course, but they show the following general trends nationally. Job loss, 35%, bills higher than earnings, 15%, evicted by family member, 13%, abuse at home, 11%, incarceration related, 11%, sick, disabled, mental issues, 10%, change in family status, 10%, alcohol and other drugs, 9%. Still homeless, even though not dirty and not on drugs. This happens for many people. What does an organized alternative shelter community look like? It may consist of tents, other small shelters, cars, RVs, or abandoned buildings. Present law in our area requires a temporary organized shelter community tent camp to move every 90 days. Seattle, Portland, and many other cities have established such camps currently operating. They may have set time limits for resident stays. They provide a centralized location for homeless people, helping greatly to provide services. They do not require participation in any religious or political activities. Where do the homeless stay now? Couch surfing among friends, unregulated, disorganized, random camps, squatting in abandoned buildings, survival sexual relationships, shelters having many restrictions, and soup kitchens. What critical advantages over city shelters do organized AHSCs offer? They do not restrict hours of entry or exit. Importantly, this allows flexible resident work schedules. They have no set meal times. This allows residents to eat when needed, especially related to work schedules. They allow residents to keep belongings in a personal protected space. This greatly reduces theft. Residents set and administer policies. This creates a sense of community and interpersonal attachments, easing the burden on social service agencies. And they cost about $4,000 per month per 100 residents to operate, about $50,000 per year per 100 people. How do we find alternative shelter communities organized? They're self-governed. Residents elect their own leadership and establish rules for their unique situations. They elect rotating leadership to handle the day-to-day operations. This reduces hierarchy formation. They have permanent rules and procedures voted on in a general meeting of all AHSC residents. People who do not follow the code of conduct and rules, including a ban on alcohol, other drugs, and weapons, get evicted. Where might we set up organized alternative shelter communities? Laws have established the right of churches to host shelter communities as part of their ministry efforts. Educational institutions have hosted alternative shelter communities as part of their ongoing efforts to provide practical experience to their students. With badly needed law changes, we could use much available state, county, and city land and buildings. How will AHSCs benefit Pierce County? They provide a safe, low-cost place for the homeless away from business areas now, compared with years required to implement the very expensive permanent best solutions. With their neighborhood patrols, they produce cleaner, safer areas, not dirtier, less safe areas as commonly feared. They qualify for various sources of grants. They result in less expensive social services. Randomly scattered, unorganized camps require far more public service expenditures. And they help produce a realistic community awareness of homeless people, issues, and working together. What about our city or county becoming a magnet? Host areas often want an organized, self-managed AHSC to stay, not move. Even so, in many areas, an AHSC has a maximum population of 100 and moves every 90 days by present law. Why would a permanent solution not create a much bigger magnet for a city or county than much less comfortable, primitive, organized AHSCs do? In the unlikely event that negative effects of hosting an AHSC occurs, a church or community can quickly and inexpensively stop supporting them, and an AHSC can move within a matter of days. Do AHSCs increase crime or litter? No. The data do not indicate an increase in crime or public safety issues or increased calls for police services. The data show that AHSCs do not increase noise, alcohol, or other drug problems, abusive language, loitering, or disturbing neighbors in an area. AHSCs, with police help if necessary, quickly evict residents who fail to abide by the code of conduct and rules. Obviously, AHSC occupants do not want their homes threatened by such behavior. What if we do this first in our area? Will we have to tell them to move? A host site does not tell an AHSC to move after 90 days. The law does this, paradoxically and unhelpfully, even when the host site wants them to stay, as often happens. We need to change this law. In short, organized alternative homeless shelter communities help by providing reduced numbers of homeless in business areas, as well as providing cleanup and safety patrols in the area. They have far more flexibility for residents than indoor shelter communities, and at much lower financial, social, and ecological costs. They empower residents to take responsibility for their own well-being. Most move on to higher quality shelter within 3 months. They fill a number of large gaps that exist in the current punishment-based system that banishes people from various areas. They benefit a large percentage of unsheltered people now. Areas that host AHSCs have a greater sense of security and fewer problems than those that do not. They do not have less security and more problems as commonly feared. So what mainly stops us? Deeply held emotional values and beliefs stop us, such as we should not make giving homeless people a safe, legal place to sleep and dispose of their waste a high priority. We have much more important things we should spend our money on. We have plenty of jobs. They're just a bunch of lazy drug users who don't want to work. They want to live that way. Actually, a very small percentage do want to live that way. They made their bed, let them lie in it. Not in my backyard. I don't want to see them or have anything to do with them. 6 reasons why people do not want to see the homeless. 1. We don't want to realize that our wealth and power occur at the expense of other people. And some homeless people work much longer, harder, and with more pain in their lives than you and I have. 2. We tend to fear people different from us, often with irrational safety concerns. 3. We may feel anxious about our own social and financial future. Many indicators suggest that we will all soon lose our wealth. 4. These inner processes can cause great emotional pain for us, and we get immediate, powerful relief by turning away from and ignoring the homeless, keeping them out of sight. 5. Decades of physics education research demonstrate that we have great difficulty changing our thinking, even with compelling evidence to do so. Perhaps most fundamentally, and related to number 4, our terror of death. As psychologists Solomon, Greenberg, and Pukzinski suggest in The Worm at the Core on the role of death in life, homelessness and homeless people remind us of our own pending death. From The Worm at the Core, Americans are particularly prone to simply avoiding thinking about death and dealing with the dying, and our short-term fossil fuel-based affluence and technology make it easier for us to keep intimations of mortality at bay. Simply put, it would benefit all of us most to make providing our unhoused people with a safe, legal place to sleep and dispose of their waste our top priority during the years that we pursue other longer-term, much more expensive options. References include Tent City Urbanism, From Self-Organized Camps to Tiny House Villages by Andrew Heben, published in 2014. This is a must-read for this subject. Banished, The New Social Control in Urban America by Beckett and Herbert, published in 2010. Excellent, deeply thought-provoking. Considering Hate, Violence, Goodness, and Justice in American Culture and Politics by Whitlock and Bronsky in 2015. For much more on why people so strongly avoid homelessness and unsheltered people, read A Mind of Its Own, How Your Brain Distorts and Deceives by experimental psychologist Cordelia Fine. And you can contact me with questions, comments, or for a detailed formal proposal to governmental organizations in MS Word format that you can use as a template. Contact me, email me, budnye@bud.nye@gmail.com.